y'all, I'm Elisa, the Scrappy Wife behind ScrappyWife.com, and today I have a Bible journal process video for you. I'm going to be journaling in John 3, a few notes and a quote based on a recent sermon at my church. I will make sure to link the sermon if you're interested. And yeah, I have a few stamp sets pulled out from By the Well for God, so we'll see what ends up on the page. I will link everything that I can find down below if you're interested in any of the supplies that I use. Otherwise, I will put you guys on fast forward. Let's go. Okay, so because I have a pretty long quote that I want to feature on this page, I'm actually going to use this typewriter stamp. This is from By the Well for God. I used to be on their creative team, and they are just a fabulous resource for faith-based stamps and also just any stamps in general. They have a pretty big variety, and I happen to really like this typewriter stamp. It's pretty large. I'm going to stamp it on a separate piece of paper because later on I'm going to go back and color it. Now I'm going to play a little bit with the background. I kind of wanted to have this kind of messy looking background. So when I use a typewriter, I don't know about anyone else, it's messy for me. Like, I never get all the words right. I tend to get the spacing wrong. It's just messy. And so that's what I'm going for on this page, is like this just messy kind of school writing, I don't know, this messy look in the back. So I have this dot grid stamp that I'm going to do in different shades of purple, kind of ombre, starting dark at the bottom and getting lighter as we go up top. And they're going to be wonky, like all different directions, just to give a little hint of color in the background without having to do a ton of watercolor, because that was originally what I was thinking I would do, is have a ton of watercolor in the background, but I think I'm actually going to bring my color into the quote instead of in the background. So this is just going to be hints of purple. I chose purple just because it's my favorite, and I feel like I haven't used it very much lately. I feel like it was feeling a little bit neglected. All right, sharing or putting a little bit of water over top. I was using Distress Oxide ink, which happens to be water reactive. So when you add water to it, it spreads a little bit, again, adding to the messy look. And I'm just making sure that that's totally dry before I go to my next stamp. This one is a grid stamp, and I'm going to use some gray and just have that kind of starting darker at the top, going every which way down the page, again, just for some interest, some texture. All of this will end up being in the background of the spread. This was the beginning of a new sermon series at my church that is entitled Eternal, Living from Now On. And the idea is that in the Bible, we are given this promise of eternal life through Jesus Christ. And that eternal life, we don't have to wait for it to start. It is given to us right now. And so we're looking at the Gospel of John a little bit more closely when Jesus is explaining to different people what it means to have this eternal life. And so we started in John 3 when Jesus was talking to Nicodemus and explaining what it means to be born again. I'm not going to break down the whole sermon right now. I will link it in the description box below if you're interested in checking out. But something I really took hold of is that as Christians, we are living in the eternal we're participating in it right now. It's not something that we're waiting for. It's not something that is coming after death, because we believe there is no after death. We are in this eternal realm. We might be trapped in our flesh right now, but eternity is there, and God gives us glimpses of it. And I just thought that was a really unique idea to Christianity, and so it's something I wanted to reflect on a little bit more. And there was a quotation that was shared by my pastor that I really liked, and I'd like to read the longer quotation for you. It says, "The decisive question for man is he related to something infinite or not? That is the telling question of his life. Only if we know that the thing which truly matters is the infinite can we avoid fixing our interests upon futilities and upon all kinds of goals which are not of real importance. Thus we demand that the world grant us recognition for qualities which we regard as personal possessions, our talent or our beauty. The more a man lays stress on false possessions and the less sensitivity he has for what is essential, the less satisfying is his life. He feels limited because he has limited aims, and the result is envy and jealousy. If we understand and feel that here in this life we already have a link with the infinite, desires and attitudes change. And again, I just loved the reminder to not just set our eyes and ears on goals of this earth, because those can be really unsatisfying in the end, but to always keep an eye towards the infinite. Okay, so I did spend that time coloring in the typewriter stamp. This is just on some white cardstock, and now this is another piece of the white cardstock, and this is going to be where my quote is going to live. And I'm just doing a little bit of shading. Again, messiness is kind of the goal for this particular page because that's how I feel when I use my typewriter. I love my typewriter. I get a lot of questions about it. I have a We Are Memory Keepers typewriter that my husband gave me for Christmas a few years ago. It's fabulous. I'm a big fan of using it for all kinds of crafting things, but like I said, I tend to get messy with it. Like my typewriting never looks neat and clean. It gives me a whole new respect for people that used to use typewriters for a living as, you know, personal assistants or secretaries. It's pretty amazing. All right, to try to smooth out some of the shading, I am covering it up with some milled lavender over the top. And you can see I took this to my typewriter, typed out my quote. I'm going to attach it right here to my paper typewriter, and now I have my centerpiece for the page. Okay, so when I laid this on the page, it ended up looking and feeling a little stark. So I grabbed some black and white florals. These are actually from Illustrated Faith, one of their devotionals a while back. I don't know if they still have this in the shop, but they're these really large black and white line florals. I'm gonna just trim them out because they have a pretty thick white border around them, and I wanted them to be a little bit more delicate feeling. So I'll trim these out, and then I'll kind of nestle them behind the typewriter just to soften up the edges a little bit. I use florals a lot of times for that specific purpose, just because when there's a harsh line, it can feel a little jarring to my eye, and so I like using florals to layer and to make those edges like of the typewriter and of the paper coming out of the typewriter just a little bit softer, a little bit gentler to the eye. Black and white florals are one of my favorites to do that technique with, and something I also like to do is if you have a favorite floral stamp, take a little time and stamp a bunch of them out onto white paper and trim them out and just have them around your creative space, your craft room, so that you can grab them and use them for this purpose. It's nice to have them already done and put together when you're working on a project just for layering purposes. All right, so like I said, I'm going to nestle these behind my typewriter and behind the paper that is coming out of the typewriter where I typed that long quote. I don't think I mentioned it before, but that is from Carl G. Jung from his book, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. So this will come out. I am going to let it hang off the page a little to the side. I don't mind that on my illustrating Bible just because this kind of has its own special place in my craft room. I don't really need to worry about things sticking out of the edges. When I am storing this for the long run, I might go back and trim off some of these pieces, but for now, no big deal. I'm just going to let them hang off. I will tear off. I will cut off the ones that hang off the bottom because of course those would get smushed right away once I picked up the Bible. And now I just have to put down my centerpiece right here. I'm using Tombow permanent adhesive simply because it was on hand when I started working on this. Normally I would use my adhesive tape glider, but my Tombow was out already and ready to go, so I'll just use it for this purpose. When I cut off little pieces, I do like to reuse them, so I'm nestling them behind the typewriter there. And now I'm going to start working on the title. You can see I left a little space at the top, and now is a good opportunity to add the title. I'm going to do some hand lettering. This is sped up 4 times. So when I hand letter, I do slow it down just a little bit more. So I'm hand lettering the phrase "from now on," which is one of the titles of this sermon series. And then I will use some tile alphas from By the Will for God in a purple, and I will add the beginning of the title, "To Live Forever From Now On." Once I am done with that, then I will go ahead and just add an arrow and a date pointing to John 3 or chapter 3, just so I remember what this was in reference to, and this page will be done. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider hitting that subscribe button as well as the bell notification button. Like I said below, I will link supplies down below. A lot of these are just from my stash though, so I would encourage you to go check out your stash and use it to journal all kinds of things. I want to give a special shout out to my Scrappy YouTube members. Thank you so much for all of your support. If you would like to find out more about Scrappy YouTube membership, then make sure to click that join button, or there is also a link for membership in the description box. All right, I hope that you have a fabulous day, and as always, keep it creative.